Hey, hi, hello, Evan Dammarell here with Locked On Cavs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Joining me as always is my co-hostess with the mostest, rocking a Locked On full zip, not even a quarter zip, real
Oh yeah,
fancy here.
baby. Yeah.
Can't wait to get one
Got-
myself so we
It,
can
it
match.
has pockets and everything, man. It's wonderful stuff.
If you're hearing that voice from audio, or if you're watching this on video, you can see his name. But this is my co-host Chris Bannon. Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Just we were having some fun earlier. Just finding out that certain people in our media sphere have never had like brie cheese or Havarti before, and I gotta say
Well, no,
Havarti cheese.
they had Havarti last week, and they said it
Okay,
was pretty
okay.
bold.
Well, Havarti with some dill, some good stuff. Or even go a little spicy Havarti. Cheese is good. Cheese has the same effect on your body, in terms of your brain as harder drugs, and we should move on from that as fast as we possibly can. But
Yeah.
Evan, the Cavs are going to
Well,
be
first
in
off,
a
I'm a little
yeah.
bummed because for those of you who are wondering how the sausage is made, we had a behind the scenes with WKYC/Tegna. Thank you again for being a part of this journey with us with WKYC and Tegna. But Chris had this exact sweater I have on right now, and I'm like, I'm gonna change and match Chris and not tell him. And he didn't do pregame, so I'm like, this is perfect. He didn't see me yet. I pop on, and Chris is rocking the locked on jacket, which now I'm just jealous because I got some major FOMO. But yes, Chris, the Cleveland Cavaliers play the Denver Nuggets tonight, and it looks like it's going to be an interesting matchup for Cleveland. It could be another rest game where it feels like Chris Paul was questionable heading into the Monday night matchup against the Cavs. He was out, and it looks like Jamal Murray is questionable as well tonight when they take on the Milwaukee Bucks with a knee injury, a knee soreness. So I think this is a good chance that the Cavs could not see Jamal Murray either, and this could be a little beneficial for the Cavs just to kind of at least make it a competitive game, not a winnable one at least.
Yeah, it's funny. Denver is an interesting place. It's hard to play. It's at a high altitude, so it
It's an
takes a little bit.
exact
It's
mile
a
off the ground.
fun facts. It's also, funnily enough, it was the apex of the John Beilein era, the highest point you might say, of his tenure as Cavaliers head coach.
If
They went in there and won.
If Kevin and Kyrie still played for the Cavs, we can make another joke here, but let's not get fired.
Some twisting. So yeah, some
twisting the
mustaches.
stash. There
Yes. So Denver's good. Mike Mullen's a good coach. They're working through some stuff. Locked In Nuggets, I was listening the other day, and they were talking about how the part of the reason they're having problems with the Kings is that the Kings are able to get their guards inside the paint and make shots in the middle of the floor area. And all I could think of was like, oh, that sounds like an area where the Cleveland Cavaliers and Colin Sexton and Darius Garland in particular have a very strong affinity for. It's an area they like to get floaters up. Colin loves that pull-up jumper. So maybe that's a
floaters too.
Yeah, Darius, he's hitting them more of late. It was a real sore spot in his shot profile to start the year, and it's starting to look a little more comfortable for him and hitting the level he was at least at last year and probably exceeding it in due time here. But that's obviously a big area. And the Jamal Murray thing's interesting because I was watching the Nuggets play the Spurs maybe a week ago, and Murray is so tough in this game. He's so good. Obviously electric in the playoffs. Has incredible chemistry with Nikola Jokic in the pick and roll. We should talk about Jokic because he's by far going to be the best player on the floor in this game. But I mean, he's a top 2 to 3 MVP candidate at absolute worst, if not the front runner for the award.
Isn't it weird to think real quick that him and Joel Embiid are front runners, and Giannis too. Giannis is technically a big man who just plays every position on the floor. Like those three are favorites to win the MVP this year. We were talking maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
And a certain guy from Akron, Ohio.
Yeah, just a kid from Akron, LeBron freaking James himself. But it's weird to think just when we talk about Jokic, who is a phenomenal player who we'll talk about in a second. It's just weird to think like the center was considered a dinosaur of a position, and now it's like making a resurgence where like there's multiple big men who are MVP candidates this year. It's just a fun thing to think about. But go ahead and proceed.
No, but so I was watching Murray in this game, and it's like he's playing really well, but he's taking all these knocks, and he's like going into the tunnel and like moving around and hopping on the bike and doing all this stuff just to kind of gut through this game. And it's like, do you have to like just let him rest a couple nights to let him actually heal his body properly and not kind of be beat up in a Cavs team is sort of perhaps an optimal moment for them to do that. But Evan, I think the biggest thing in this game is just thinking about not Joel Embiid, the Nikola Jokic matchup, because again, he's having an outrageous season. Arguably I think arguably right now the best passer out of any big in the league right now, if not the best of all time. He's absolutely insanely creative. He's hitting threes. He's the
future, the big man position.
like Google, if you don't know what the Sombor Shuffle is, go like on YouTube and watch clips of him hitting the Sombor Shuffle. It's incredible. He's an incredible player, and like
Well, after
you know,
you do that Google search, Google the Balkan boys and learn about how Nikola Jokic and some other Eastern European players grew up. They are tough as nails. And there's like a picture of Jokic being pulled around in a horse cart. And he's a 7'3" man, so he's already comically big to begin with. But to see him in a little horse cart is just even funnier. I'm sorry I keep
yeah.
cutting you off. I like the Nuggets a lot, and they're just an interesting team to me.
Well, they're a template organization for the Cavs, I think, in a lot of ways, because they're very strong player development. They have a coach who's maybe not the highest echelon of the league, but Mike Malone's a dang solid coach who coaches guys up very well, has a firm grasp in the locker room, and they have bets on talent. Monty Morris has become one of the better backup point guards in the league, if not probably a starting caliber guard. Jokic obviously was a second round pick. Funny how like they take Yusuf Nurkic in the first round of that same draft, and then Jokic becomes the transcendent player. Just funny how that kind of works out sometimes. But like when you think about Jokic, like okay, like how do the Cavs? I don't think the Cavs are obviously just gonna Drummond, you're gonna defend him, and you need to work your butt off against him, and Jared Allen, you need to do the same thing. There's not like good answers to actually defend Nikola Jokic. You just have to like kind of try. And I would expect some doubles, and maybe if they don't have their full arsenal of talent, like you can do some doubling and make it, and he's going to make incredible passes, but maybe if it's not, if it's guys later down on the rotation and not like actual rotation guys, maybe like they just miss some shots and it breaks your way. Like I think that's kind of got to be the basic game plan if you're Cleveland.
It really is. And actually, I'm looking at it now. Some interesting statistics in terms of starting centers. Audrey Drummond and Nikola Jokic have played each other 8 times in their time in the NBA. Jokic has been in the NBA for 5 years, Drummond 8. They're 4-4 against each other. And it's actually an interesting thing. They score about the same amount. Drummond with 16.8 points per game. Jokic was 16.9. Drummond obviously out rebounds him. And we're going to talk about this more a little bit in the episode here. Jokic is a better passer. He's actually a better deflector, but Drummond is the better shot blocker. So it's an interesting matchup for sure. I think Jokic is going to, at least in recent years, actually, no, I stand corrected. Drummond is the last player to get the last laugh last season when the Pistons beat the Nuggets 128-123 in overtime. But in terms of Jared Allen and Jokic, it's not even close. Jokic almost doubles every single statistic. I mean, and in terms of assists as well, he almost quadruples what Jared Allen produces, which is just insane. And Jared is actually 4-2 all time against Jokic, which is the only thing he really has a win in, which is just an interesting matchup as well. But he is going to prevent a defensive mismatch nightmare for the Cavs. And that is certainly something I'm going to want to pick the brain of JD Bickerstaff on more when we get closer to game time, just because how do you defend truly a unicorn? Like, I hate that term for some players that have like such a unique skill set because it got used too frequently, like too soon, too frequently. Like every single player became a unicorn when that became a popular term in the vernacular. But like Jokic truly is a one of a kind player, at least in this era of basketball. Because like you could look at Sabonis's dad. I don't want to butcher his name, so I don't want to go there. But like there's big men in the past who have moved the ball as well. Like Vlade Divac is another example of that too. But Jokic just does it at such an elite level that he's a nightmare for the Cavs, and especially for their big men. And like Drummond has a propensity to foul and frustration. Allen can do the same as well. I feel like Cleveland's metal in their big man rotation is going to be certainly tested, especially with Larry Nance Jr. out and probably Kevin Love too.
Yeah, that was actually my next question is, Kevin, he's going to play soon. All indications that he's going to be back very soon. I believe JB said on Monday that Kevin is probably going to play himself back into shape. Like that is going to be something where he has to play himself back into shape. And he himself said on the Road Tripping podcast and with RJ and Channing that you can work out and get your cardio back up and get stronger in the gym, but like their basketball shape has to just basically come from getting 5-on-5 action and playing games. And I believe that is true. So it's going to take Kevin some time to get reacclimated, but you think there's any chance Wednesday is his return? It seems to me like all indications seem to be like it's got to be this week.
It's got to be this
Wednesday.
week.
Wednesday would seem kind of an interesting date.
Wednesday would make sense. Playing against the Clippers on Friday would be a rough ask for Kevin to make his return.
Him being on this road trip is a signal that he's gonna. Yeah, he wouldn't if he was not gonna play. Especially during COVID.
Travel.
Well, it's even just like in a normal year. If he was like, if they needed him to rehab and do stuff that didn't involve pregame workouts and stuff, he would not travel. Like he would just stay in Cleveland.
They'd keep him in Cleveland and monitor his situation and rehab process.
So him traveling is an indication that he is going to play sooner rather than later. And I would guess on this road trip, it'd be kind of surprising me if he didn't. And Wednesday, the Cavs need him if assuming he's healthy and good to go. And, if he plays Wednesday, that's good. But I think that the story is really just going to be how they approach defending Nikola Jokic. It'll be it's a very unique game plan to kind of develop something for him. But it's a fun game. And I really like Denver. Even if Murray plays, people will get to see perhaps the best chemistry pick and roll in the league with Jokic and Murray. Michael Porter Jr. is a very interesting player. Like, they have a lot of stuff that's really interesting. And there's some Cavs connection. Jordy Fernandez, an assistant, was the Canton Charge head coach for a time. And, there's some, and Mike Malone obviously was worked for the Cavs for a long time as well. Yeah. So there's definitely some connections there.
There's definitely some interesting connections. I am interested to see if Kevin Love will make his debut, or at least his return to Cleveland's lineup. He'd probably be a starter if on Wednesday against the Nuggets, but JB Bickerstaff plays as close to his vest on Monday night when they asked if Kelsey Russo, the Athletic, asked if Torian Prince would draw the start with Larry Nance Jr. sidelined due to his surgery. JB said maybe. So JB's a notorious coach to do these kind of things, but it'll be interesting to see what they do in the offensive system for Cleveland if Kevin Love does come back soon. And Chris, we'll have to talk about that in the next segment, but before we do that, why don't you tell us about some of our sponsors today?
Yeah, this episode is brought to you by 1010. Now, you may have read about this in the New York Times, in Style Magazine, and Forbes, and we're excited to tell you about it. 1010 is an exclusive collection of 10 one-of-a-kind engagement rings designed by 10 of the most distinctive designers working today. Using only diamonds responsibly sourced from Botswana, 10 design masters have each produced a uniquely beautiful commitment ring. They're available now exclusively at BlueNile.com, and when they're gone, they are gone. We all know that the diamond engagement ring is iconic. It's a timeless expression of the deepest commitment between two people. And with 1010, it's been beautifully re-envisioned in the hands of 10 modern designers working exclusively with sustainably sourced diamonds. If you're ready to mark a special commitment or are looking for a unique and meaningful way to celebrate Valentine's Day, you're definitely going to want to check this out. Again, this exciting limited edition collection of diamond engagement rings is available now exclusively at BlueNile.com. Then there's also the Locked On Today podcast. We, as Evan and I, are covering everything you need to know about the Cleveland Cavaliers. But what about the rest of sports? Now, the Locked On Podcast Network has you covered there as well with Locked On Today. It's hosted by the great Peter Bukowski, and it's all the sports news you need every morning in under 20 minutes. Subscribe to the Locked On Today podcast wherever you get podcasts.
All right, we are back. Chris, we talked about this in the last segment. Kevin Love will be probably making his, wow, I really butchered that sentence. But either way, Kevin Love will probably be making his return to the Cavaliers lineup on this long, lengthy West Coast road trip. Chris and I will be losing a lot of sleep watching the Cavs play. They play at 9 o'clock in Phoenix. I think they play at 10 o'clock in Denver and 10 o'clock in Los Angeles. So fun week coming up, especially because I turned 20.
You're getting older, but at least for our sanity, you get Wednesday and then you get Friday, Saturday, and or Friday, Sunday. Well, Sunday, that's Sunday. Sunday, Monday one's a little brutal, but I'll take at least the Friday one in Portland. I'll take at least one that's not obscenely late. So yeah,
folks, if you're listening for the first time, if you check out next Monday's episode, I'm going to ask Chris several times, does he have a case of the Mondays if we stay up for Sunday's entire game? But
which TBD.
TBD. We will see. I probably will because I'm a maniac. But Kevin Love will be returning to Cleveland's roster and rotation, and he probably will not have any type of impact defensively, obviously, because he's not a plus defender to begin with. You feel like you're bobbing your head back and forth because you're processing this, or you're about to tell me I'm wrong. But
no, I'm thinking about the sleep schedule for next week, which is just a classic Chris move of overthinking.
Pull out that calendar and pull out your planner and your spreadsheets. If you know, you know. He slapped it. For those of you listening on audio, he just slapped his planner to let everyone know that he's been planning out his life. But Kevin Love will really be a huge part of this offense, I think. From once there's going to be a little bit of clunkiness at first because he has to get acclimated to playing with his teammates again because he lost valuable preseason time, barely played in the beginning of the season. He played way too much in the double OT set against Detroit. I think he got hurt the following game against Philly, or it could be vice versa. They played in Detroit and then they played it was a back-to-back and he played the next night and got hurt in the first quarter of that game. Yes, that's it. So they probably should have played so much against Detroit. He was on a minutes restriction with the Cavs were trying to win that game. So And then he obviously gets hurt with the calf strain, which was an Achilles injury at first, which is even scarier, but it was downgraded to a calf strain and has been rehabbing. The Cavs always err on the side of caution with their players. So there's going to be a bit of a clunkiness. But Chris, I think we're really going to see the true apex of Cleveland's offense, because then you'll have Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, Kevin Love. I know Audrey Drummond is a bit of a curmudgeon on this offense and defense, but he is a factor offensively. You can't replicate 20 points and 20 rebounds, even if they are on 30 shots a night. But and Jared Allen as well, Torian Prince, Jetty Osman, like we're going to see a lot of key pieces finally be able to gel in Cleveland. And I think we're finally going to get an idea of, is Cleveland really the worst offensive team in the league, or are they maybe more middle of the pack?
I think middle of the pack would be extremely ambitious. Kevin's going to help, but I don't think him helping them that much to me would be kind of
middle
crazy.
Of the pack is a bit of a generous term. I'm not saying fifth; they go from 30th to 15th. I'm saying they're a little bit more respectable than they've looked at times, and the team was ravaged by injuries. And I remember they played the Nets. Kevin Durant told the media like, "Oh, they're the 30th offensive team in the league. They just got lucky tonight." And I'm like, to myself, I'm like, it's not really the full context of the story. They're missing almost every key player for 2 weeks, and it just tanked their offensive rating.
Yeah, they've had little blips for like over a 1-2 week stretch. They were like 23rd, but like right now over the last 2 weeks, they're 28th in offensive rating. Again, as you mentioned, 30th for the season at 104.9 points per 100 possessions. That's 0.2 behind the Minnesota Timberwolves, according to Cleaning the Glass, which takes out heaves. So like any junk possessions, this factors them out. Good luck or bad, kind of impacts those. But I think Kevin just shooting three should help.
How many threes a night do you think he should be shooting? That's the real question.
He took 7. Apple Watch, man. Took 7 a game last year, if I'm remembering correctly. I think he's got to get close to that.
Yeah, I think 7.
If not at that, I mean,
7 to 8's ideal for Cleveland, but they're not a volume 3-point shooting team. Jetty Osman said the other night, we need to be shooting 30 to 40 like the Utah Jazz, and Cleveland's shooting 25 at tops.
But here's the thing. Kevin Love is the one guy who organically is going to take a lot of them. Colin Sexton, as a player, like is still very hesitant to fire them up. Darius Garland is the same way. Jetty Osman, probably to a detriment, is like, hell yeah, brother, I'm going to take threes. And like, they're not always going to be smart shots. Isaac Okoro does not have a three. He's taking them when he's open, but he's not like a pull-up three-pointer in a consistent way yet.
He's not. Larry Nance is a hesitant three-point shooter.
The Cavs have Larry Nance shooting a career-high threes and shooting them at a good clip, but he is absolutely stretched to the absolute maximum of what he's going to do as a shooter. And he's out 4 to 6 weeks. Or 6 weeks, because he had surgery on Monday. So you're in a position where, like, I think Kevin has to be Kevin's role. The good news about that is Kevin's clear role as an NBA player since he came to Cleveland with LeBron, and obviously I think post, just in terms of how the game is shifted around him, is he's an elite floor spacer.
Yes.
I think the question we'll get into is like, how does it impact the defense? I'm not as worried about that. I don't think he's going to be like a Davis Bertans level problem on that end of the floor. I think as a rebounder and as a and just kind of that, and schematically being in the right spots, he's going to be able to hang if they play some zone. I think it'll work. Yeah. And Evan, frankly, I think the best way to utilize Kevin and the best Cavs offensive lineup is going to be, I don't know who the 3 is, because like defensively it might be Okoro, but like offensively I don't know who it is. It could be Torian Prince. But I think Prince is your best bet there. The best Cavs offensive 5 is going to be Garland, Sexton, probably Torian Prince, maybe Jetty Osman if he's having a good night, and then Kevin Love and Jared Allen. It's very clear to me that is like the optimal, most modern way you could go, because Kevin can space. You can run all the spread pick and roll you already like to run. Kevin can just get a lot of easy threes, do some secondary creation. Kevin is also the one guy on the team that is like very willing to just like get when the offense kind of resets, instead of having to run a pick and roll or go a dribble in and ISO, he's like, I'm just going to take a pull up. Like he is just this missing ingredient to what they're going to do. And again, I don't think he's going to save the offense, but if they're 28th and he's playing well, like that's a signal that like things are pretty broken in a way that, you can't really make excuses for anymore.
No, Kevin Love's shooting and Kevin Love's veteran savvy is really going to unlock things. I agree. Actually, in terms of Kevin, he could be the Brie cheese or the Havarti cheese that unlocks Cleveland's offense, just to add some more cheese comparisons to the beginning of the episode. But no, I like that hypothetical lineup you propose, where it's Garland, Sexton, Prince, Love, Allen. Like there's really just a lot of fun plug and play options there. Like Sexton isn't abhorrent defensively this year, so he's at least trying on the defensive side of the ball. He's not great, but he's doing better.
Well, Garland has active hands. If you're Kevin, playing next to Jared Allen is the best case thing for you at this point in your career.
Yeah.
Because Jared Allen is going to cover all of your mistakes.
Jared Allen is the perfect center to play alongside Kevin Love. There is no doubt in my mind that he's the perfect
Unless it was
center.
like Rudy Gobert, like, and then the non-Rudy Gobert category, like Gobert is elite of the elite, and Allen's
Would
not
you
that.
rather
not
have
level.
Rudy Gobert alongside Kevin Love at his current contract with factoring that massive extension to his,
but
or
contract
Allen?
aside, in terms of just pure skill, it'd be Gobert.
Well, no, skill as well, but I cover the Cavs for Forbes. So I got to think of the dollars here, as Johnny Manziel once gestured, like I just did.
Johnny Manziel, who hates the city of Cleveland, according to his Twitter account now, which is just a wild blaming Cleveland for his mistakes is just like a choice, my guy. But
dork. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I think like in terms of like value, and even Allen's next contract is going to be significantly less than what it's going to make. And Kevin Love is probably like in some ways hoping to like end up in a spot where like he can play like at a title level again. I think that would probably be what would make him happiest to some degree. But I think if he's
that ship is getting ready to leave port unless he can show he's healthy, and if he can't, it's going to set sail on him.
Yes. But if he's going to play out this contract in Cleveland, or at least another year of it, Jared Allen's like kind of the optimal center to kind of like getting him instead of Drummond as the center for this year and next year and beyond is like a much better setup for Allen in terms of defense and kind of letting him do Kevin Love stuff.
Well, it's actually interesting you mentioned that. Let's talk a little bit about Audrey Drummond and why he's not an ideal fit for Cleveland's offense in terms of finishing and alongside Kevin Love, because I'm sure you have some numbers on this too. But let me give you a quick word from one of our sponsors in betonline.ag. The Super Bowl is over, but basketball is in full swing, and there's only one place that has you covered and one place we trust for sports betting, and that's betonline.ag. Sign up today for a free account at betonline.ag and use that promo code LOCKEDON for your 50% welcome bonus. Like I mentioned, basketball is in full swing, and that means college basketball and NBA hoops as well on a night-to-night basis. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get in on the action. Don't forget to use that promo code LOCKEDON to receive a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts and the exclusive betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And speaking of college hoops, March Madness is a few months away, but the future of the NBA is on display right now. Get a head start on next year's draft analysis by subscribing to Chad Ford's NBA Big Board podcast. Draft guru Chad Ford has his first big board of the year out with profiles of Cade Cunningham, Jalen Suggs, Evan Mobley, and more. Subscribe to Chad Ford's NBA Big Board podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Probably where you find Locked On Cavs, and listeners, totally recommend this because as the Cavs embark on this road trip, they're going to be sliding in draft rankings, and you might want to get acquainted with some of these top prospects. All right, Chris, we are back for the last segment for Wednesday, February 10th. I am 28 years old in 1 day, to be technical here. So happy 28th and 1 day birthday to myself. But the Cavs, we talked about how Jared Allen is the ideal fit in the Cavs offensive lineup alongside Kevin Love, Taurean Prince, Colin Sexton, and Darius Garland. Why the heck isn't Audrey Drummond in there? And he is the highest paid big man on Cleveland's roster, and he's a former All-Star, and I hear all the time from people who listen to the show, why are we so low on him? Let's finally put this nail in the coffin. Why isn't Audrey Drummond an ideal offensive fit in Cleveland?
Well, I think it stems from the issue that I think one of the limitations of him generally as a player is just his shooting at the rim. So, Evan, he has 3 career seasons where he is at a above average finishing rate for a big man at the rim, and that's troubling for a guy making as much money as he is. Mm-hmm. Even more troubling, he only has one section of his career where he's above average in terms of percentage on short mid-range shots, so kind of in that 4 to 14 feet range. That was his 8 games with the Cavs last year, so it's just like you got to throw that out the window because of the size of it. He's actually shooting 43% this year, so that's at least like kind of an interesting bit there. But Drummond is shooting this year 52% at the rim. That is in the bottom 6% of big men, and that is down 10% from his time at Cleveland last year. It's about down 10% from all of these other instances. And you're saying, okay, like how many times is he shooting at the rim? 73% of his shots are coming at the rim this season. So some of that is not all on him. It is unfair to put this all on him, but he is a guy who needs spacing. He needs that kind of room to kind of work a little bit better, but he's clearly not capable of overcoming some of the limitations you have. Jared Allen is shooting like upwards of 70% and he's an elite finisher on lobs, and that's just not something Drummond is. And Drummond like maybe is more technically skilled in some ways as a passer right now and all that stuff, but He's not the hammer at the rim that you kind of need to finish off plays. He would look like a much better player, like finishing and dunking and rolling to the rim, playing for like the Nets or like another high level team. But in the role he is in, and in kind of the situations he's always kind of been in, there's a lot on him, and his touch around the rim is a little iffy because he often is getting his own misses and then like throwing them back up. So it's just like this kind of loop you get in with him.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yes. It's tricky to kind of imagine this. And if I'm the Cavs, I think like it's very clear that like they view finishing at the rim like that is like that and just pure shot blocking are the two things Allen is definitively better at than Audrey Drummond, and it's sort of clear in getting him and kind of signaling what they think about him that's like the reason. And Evan, like the whole team as a whole is not shooting well at the rim. Colin's not shooting well at the rim. Darius isn't shooting well at the rim. Kevin is going to help the offense, but he's never been like a really great finisher around the rim, despite having like good touch and quick little post moves. It's not something he's particularly ultimately great at either. Even though he's a very skilled player inside, but he's not finishing at the highest clip at the rim. So like and the Cavs are second or first in the league right now, in terms of take the percentage of their shots that they're taking at the rim. So TLDR, the Cavs take a lot of shots at the rim. They miss a lot of them, and their offense is bad.
Yeah.
That's the gist of this, and Drummond's at the center of it.
Everyone called Chris a doomsayer for saying the Cavs weren't a good offensive team when the good times were rolling, but Mr. Manning was validated when he wrote a very nice article for Fear the Sword about how their 3-point shooting wasn't sustainable.
Yeah,
and then everybody else just kind of came out of the woodworks and said like their 3-point shooting was never sustainable. And like Chris is just like, I've been saying this for years, wagging his finger like Bernie.
Shots to Bernie, but I just am outside in the cold in my mittens. But Evan, Drummond, according to like again, this isn't like a catch-all thing. And I tweeted out this chart the other day that still kind of breaks my brain. But Audrey Drummond is the only player in like the top 15 in usage rate, and I'll do 15 plus Jokic because Jokic is 18th in usage rate, which for people that don't know what that means, that basically means the amount of possessions you're finishing on a team. And something like the amount of times you have the ball is sort of the approximate way for us to say this. He was like 8th when I looked, I think, and he was the only player with like a negative offensive impact, according to like a real plus minus evaluation from ESPN. So like you are featuring him a lot and you're not getting returns, and that's like the root of this. But I also don't think we know like it's a very open-ended question about Sexton, about Garland, about JB as an offensive coach. Like if you like had Allen starting and then JaVale McGee's your backup and you ran the offense like more like how good would it be really? I don't think it's like massively better, but it probably functions a little bit better is my guess.
Yeah, no, it would look a lot more similar to what we saw when Audrey Drummond was out against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Cavs are just a lot more active, a lot more movement, screens, everything like that. The Cavs are very lethargic when they start Audrey Drummond, and they have to start Audrey Drummond because one, he's making almost $29 million a year, and two, the Cavs are trying to see what his availability or what the best offer they can get is on the trade market. The best way to do that is to play him as many minutes as possible and kind of feature him offensively. So the Cavs have the keys and the tools to have a more modern NBA offense that makes more sense. But right now they're playing a little bit of archaic basketball, and Chris laid it out beautifully, just what's not working necessarily. And I think, Chris, as we kind of wrap this up, I'm curious, and I'm just thinking about it as I process what you said and just the numbers themselves. Is Drummond being such a poor finisher at the rim, does that have an inverse effect on, let's say, Sexton, especially? Like Sexton's finishing at the rim really surprised me when I saw the infamous chart that we got mentioned in and tagged in today on Twitter. Do you think that has a bit of an inverse effect, or do you think it's just Colin's a little bit more trigger happy than he should be at times?
We got tagged in a chart.
Yeah, it was a
all right, send this to me off the air because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Somebody laid out a nice graph to display like some finishing numbers for players, and Colin Sexton was just below like the league average.
Oh, this is the Kirk Goldsberry.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Kirk's great. His book Sprawl Ball is like very, very good. So I don't think it helps because there's no space inside.
Nope.
And some of this also is just like Isaac Okoro is positioned as like a 3. And he's getting used to handle the ball a little bit, and I think they're pushing him to do more stuff on offense, but he's not like spacing the floor yet. Teams just don't care. like even Larry Nance, it was very notable that when the Bucks were defending Larry Nance, Giannis was a good 5 feet off Larry Nance Jr., who is like kind of proven to be a shooter now, but they're just like, take the shot. We don't care. We're going to cramp
He's a
everything else
timid
up.
shooter, but that's also
Yes.
Milwaukee's defensive scheme is they dare you to shoot threes and they'll protect the
Yes.
paint instead.
Yes.
That's what Cleveland does as well.
Yes, but there are even instances where like teams don't go over screens against Colin Sexton. They're like, take the pull up. We know you don't really want to. Like that is the adjustment they've made after he got up to that blistering start out of the season. That is not the full thing, but like the basic adjustment teams have made is they're saying, okay, like we know you don't want to take this pull up. We're gonna slide under the screen and beat you to the spot you want to get on the floor and at least muck it up for you a little bit. We're gonna dare you to beat us. It's why like Michael Pina wrote a really good piece at SI about De'Aaron Fox. And it's like, he's developed this really nice step back game. And that's going to be something that Sexton, I think, could ape and potentially kind of implement it in his thing. But it's also, I think there's also some schematic things that don't make sense. Like number one, Kevin Love being back has reduced the scope of the playbook. You're not running nearly as much stuff to design up threes or create easy reads for people. And number two, I don't think Dylan Windler is being used properly.
Nope. And I think that's something we need to talk about at length more when it comes to offensive issues with this Cleveland team, and maybe a player we need to focus in on when he gets more minutes. It's unfortunate because.
But I put this in the Fear the Sword chat the other day. We have like I think he's being pushed inside. Yeah, like he's not filling space. He's not like rotating around to fill the shooter spots. He's like crashing to the offensive glass, and that just feels weird to me. And are you seeing the same thing, or am I hallucinating something here?
No, I'm seeing the same thing. I think the Cavs need to use him more in like situations where they can, like, especially like the elevator doors play the Spurs run, or just getting him easy looks from the perimeter. Like they ran a play similar to that to Darius Garland the other night, and shouts to a friend of the pod, Justin Rowan, for pointing this out to me. But Garland drew 3 fouls doing that because teams respect Garland as a shooter, and I think they'll respect Windler as a shooter too. And a lot of it's rust because Windler's been away for so long, and just the other parts of things are just a little frustrating too. But yeah, they're not really utilizing Dylan Windler, and it's just. Once we kind of get more sustainable footage with all these key players out there for Cleveland, maybe we can kind of say like, okay, maybe GP Bickerstaff runs too vanilla of an offensive scheme, or maybe he's kind of waiting to unlock things for Kevin to be back. Because like Chris, you and I have both heard like the Cavs really had a focus on this offense being centered around Kevin and Larry, and then complementing them with the young guards and the young players as well to kind of take some of the pressure off those young players too.
Well, think about how many times I've mentioned the double drag set, and like how many times they. But think about how many times they ran it in the preseason. You know?
They ran it a ton.
They ran it with Thon Maker and like JaVale McGee, and like they're obviously never going to run that in real time. And Thon's like not even on the team anymore. But like they were running that a lot, and it was clearly like a staple of what they wanted to do. And then they don't run it now because they know they can't really run it without Kevin. Yeah. And I also just like don't believe that like when we talked to JB a while back. He had told us that like they were filming stuff in their own bubble to like work on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah,
like
and they're studying Miami and Denver, who are teams who really play through their big men in terms of offense and defense,
and who were constantly moving and having their shooters move. Like Duncan Robinson is not like crashing off the glass; he's running around the floor like a maniac trying to get open off of screens. Like Dylan Windler is not Duncan Robinson, but like he could move a little more. Like you could design movement, and I just don't believe that this is the offense they designed in the bubble.
No,
my guess is that my hunch is that injuries made them change their plans, and this is like the best thing they could come up with without a lot of time to practice, because they don't really get to like do like it's not like the NFL where like you can install stuff during the week. Like, you don't really have time for that in the NBA. You just don't.
Yeah, you really don't, and it's just going to be an interesting matchup, especially when they play Denver on Wednesday night. Chris, we probably got to get out of here, and there's a lot more we can digest when it comes to the Cavs offense. But right now, they're just not a good offensive team, and I think playing Denver is really going to put things in perspective because Denver is a very balanced team. Phoenix is a good test as well, especially for their younger players, just because they have Devin freaking Booker, who's really, really good. But yeah, no, it's just going to be interesting to see what the Cavs kind of handle on this road trip. They're going to be playing a lot of good teams above 500. They do not have a winning record against above 500 teams. So, Chris, before we get out of here, who do you think wins Cavs Nuggets on Wednesday night? Because infamously, for those who are longtime listeners, Chris and I both said the Cavs had a 0% chance of beating the Nuggets, and they went in there and smashed Denver, which was a rare win for not just John Beilein, but the Cavs as well, who are historically bad against the Nuggets in Denver.
I just go Denver because they have Jokic.
That's fair. I'm gonna go Denver as well, and we're gonna look like morons the following day when we give our recaps and thoughts on this. But Chris, is there anything you
Somewhere,
want to
yes,
go ahead?
The Cavs will win, and John Beal will be smiling. That's all I got to say here.
He'll be sitting at home, eating his Werther's butterscotch, a second one for the night because
Having
he's
it
feeling a little frisky.
practicing shooting, practicing some shots with the beeline ball.
I almost detached my retinas. That's how hard I rolled my eyes. But Chris, when we get out of here, where do you want? Is there anything you want to say to the fine folks at home?
No, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks again for supporting the pod. If you're watching on WKYC for the first time, you can find us wherever you get podcasts. If you go to our Twitter page at Locked On Cavs, you click the link tree link in the bio. There's a link to our Discord and every platform we are on. You can find us there, and please go and leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts if you're so kind.
Thank you again for checking us out. If you are a first-time listener, like Chris said, you can find us anywhere you can get your podcast. The 5-star reviews happen to help quite a bit for us. But until next time, go Cavs.